Welcome to the World Builder's Anvil, episode 146. We're going to give you the Frighteners.
Blah, blah.
It's supposed to be my intro, Jeff. Add your blah, blah. You couldn't help it, could you?
Don't know where to start building your fantasy world? Do you need more? Does it make sense? Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination. This is the place that will help prime your mind. Now, it's time to heat up the forge, break out the mithril ingots and hammer. Welcome to the World Builder's Anvil. I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram. Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. Welcome back. As always, I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Blah.
Drink your blood.
All right.
You Count Chocula?
Count Chocula. Yes, I'm delicious.
You can be Frankenberry then.
I do believe I am delicious. If the world ends, people should eat me. Okay. Before we hop right into this episode here, which I think we're both kind of excited about.
Definitely.
One, after Michael's failure to keep up with the orcs and the plaintiff kaput, he's back.
Well, actually, I didn't want to give my post infiltration report yet, but I'd say it was a fairly successful adventure. I know that you're upset about me losing 14 magically endowed items that were really difficult to get our hands on, and we're going to have to sacrifice 47 virgins to do it again, but...
Well, the sacrifice is fine.
But the magical items, I realize, it's going to take a while to recollect that stuff. I'm just saying, I don't think it was all a total loss. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. Yeah, that's a story for a different episode. Okay. So a couple quick notes. For those of you in the Western Mass or in the New England area, there is a conference 11.5 and 11.6 called Chibicon at the Springfield Public Library. My wife and I, who do Small Biz Life, another wonderful podcast about business. We'll be talking about how to turn your geek passion into a business. So if you want to go check that out, we'll be there, I believe, 11/6 at 1 o'clock. We'll be doing a workshop there. So go up to West Springfield, check out Chibicon, spend both days there, spend some cash. Not on us because we won't be selling anything. So save the cash for us unless you just want to give it to us. That's fine too. And
I wonder if I could make it up. Do I have to get tickets? Can I just go up there?
I should have probably looked that up before I started announcing it. I don't know the specifics to get in, but it'd be cool if you come.
I was going to say I'd love to go. We could hand out business cards.
Yes. Okay. Now, as another note, this will be dropping on technically the 30th of October, but most of you probably won't see it until the 31st because I do it kind of late on Sunday. That's why I always say it's a Monday episode.
So for here in the United States, that's Halloween.
It'll be Halloween.
That's why we're talking scary stuff
It'll
today.
be scary. I'm scared already. I'm always scared, though.
But you're scared because of another reason.
Yeah, and it's because I've not yet remembered to sign up for NaNoWriMo.
And I'm glad you said it because I haven't either. In my mind, NaNoWriMo lives as just a world event, not as a thing you actually have to get registered for.
You actually want to go to the NaNoWriMo, I believe it's .org. I could be wrong. Just Google NaNoWriMo, and there'll be a link in the show notes.
As a matter of fact, if you give me a second, I'll do it while you're talking.
Yeah, that way you can actually be signed up and I'll forget.
No, I won't sign up. I'm just going to confirm the website.
But if you go to the show notes, you'll have a link to the show notes to NaNoWriMo right there to sign up. And that way, what you can do is at the end of every day, you can go copy and paste your entire manuscript up there, and it will give you a word count. And that way, it'll also confirm if you're done. There are interesting prizes for those of you who win. And for those of you who lose, blah, blah, nothing really happens.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is NaNoWriMo.org.
Yes, NaNoWriMo.org.
NaNoWriMo.org.
And when you sign up, remember to sign up for NaNoWriMo, not NaNoWriMo Summer Camp, because you're probably a little late for that. And for those of you who waited to the first, well, if you forgot, that's your own fault because we warned you a day before.
When you sign up, what does signing up actually do? It's just the emails they send you?
There are a whole bunch of groups that you can join into to help get sort of rah-rah-rod.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll take one of the many Facebook groups I've not yet started, and we'll use it as a mini NaNoWriMo group. But since I haven't really pushed it, it might be hard to get people in there at this point.
Well, if you're announcing it on the show, I'm sure there's a lot of people like us who have waited for the last minute, and they might jump on it as a group of people who are like, oh no, I'm running behind.
I'd probably do it in Facebook though, because Facebook groups are easier.
Well, I know, but my point is mentioning it here for any one of our listeners, especially it gets some interaction going between us.
And there's also some other benefits if you win. Because they're actually trying to get people ultimately to publish novels. But there will be some discounts for services. I believe Scrivener, which is an app I highly push. I'll put a link to it in the show too. Let me make a note of that. Scrivener is software designed mainly to write novels, and you can use it for anything. I've seen there's this guy, Joseph Michael, who came up with this whole way of actually running a blog through it. Very amazing, where just the way to organize it and personalize it for your own needs is tremendous.
I want to say Hardwick uses Scrivener. I could be wrong on that, but
probably. I mean, most writers use it, especially Mac writers, because it was first designed for Mac, and it's been ported over to PC for those of you who like PC, which I appreciate because
I like PC.
As an information technology analyst, Microsoft has made me a lot of money. So,
thanks for crashing every few minutes.
But now some of you are afraid of NaNoWriMo, and you're like, I don't want to do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
The worst you can do is not reach your word count. The best you can do is crush it. Because you know what? 50,000 words in a month, even in a normal month, you could do 50,000 words in a month, even if you work another job.
And I'll tell you what, let's say you don't make it. Let's say you get to 20,000 words at the end of the month. That's still 20,000 words. That's still the good chunk of a novel.
Yeah.
You can still finish it. You can finish it in December.
Yes.
But try to get it done this month. Like, I got to tell you, I am a little intimidated by this because I swung and missed once before. So we'll see what happens this time.
Yeah. But you know what? It's quite a possible thing to do. And if you love writing, the thing that makes you a writer is writing. So don't be afraid of it. Don't let this be your fear.
That's what has me a little messed up about it, because I used to write all the time.
Yes.
And it's not that I feel that it's going to be really hard to jump back into it, but I'm out of practice. Like, I haven't been writing
But remember,
that kind
this
of
is
consistency.
also a first draft.
Well, I'm not worried about the quality. I'm worried about getting the quantity. That's the only thing that, honestly, like, I have like the quality, even if it doesn't come out the way I want it to come out in the first draft,
you can edit that.
But I know what it should be. Yeah. So even if I stumble through and I get like part of the idea down, I know the rest of the idea is going to be there at some point.
But you know what would be a great idea for you to do?
What?
Go back and listen to an episode we did on outlines. Having that outline will bring you a long way.
Here's one of the things that I feel really good about is I have the outline. Like, I wrote the outline a long time ago. So when I was looking for the files the other day and I pulled the outline out, you know what? Now I have to explain, because this is contradictory to what we talked about in the prior episode. I'm talking about the original book I was going to write. We, in our outlining episode,
or that's actually our failed outlining episode.
Our failed, the first attempt at an outlining episode, which we ended up just kind of brainstorming the whole time. We talked about
it was a great
an
episode.
idea that I had that was going to be the book I was going to write for this NaNoWriMo. I've decided to not do that because I don't have a good handle on the story. I have a good handle on the world, but not the story. What I want to tell with that world. But the other book that has been swimming in my head for like 5-6 years now, I have a really good handle of that. Like, I know what that story's about, what it's supposed to be. So I'm going to go with that idea. And that book, I have a really good outline for it. I pulled it out the other day and I was looking at it. And what I really like about it is I have each chapter, and each chapter has a pretty good one-line story. Like, this chapter will be this story. So literally it's going to be every chapter's a story. And I know how to write each of those. So I think it's going to be pretty plug and play, except for making my word count.
And I do find it easier to write stories. Some people I know can sort of take chapters here and there and write them, and are very tremendous writers at doing that. For me, it's just easier to punch out the story as it's happening in my brain. So to follow an outline for me personally really helps. But we should probably get off of this subject and get to the actual topic, because if you're like me and you've been watching the news on the presidential election, nothing but fear is consuming your soul.
Yes, scary stuff.
Really great for Halloween, not so great
for the world.
For the world, if either one of these two yahoos become president, and if you don't like that, oh well. I find them both terrifying. And here's the thing. Fear is much better in media because it's not real. So I love things that frighten me in media. Now, I think an exception to the rule. Most things that are designated as horror.
I don't think you're an exception to the rule.
No, as I get into what I'm about to talk about.
Okay.
Which is, I typically do not find horror movies terrifying. Okay. I typically find them humorous and silly. And that's the ones that are supposed to be scary. Now, the ones that are actually humorous and scary. Can you give me an example
that something that most people agree upon that is a scary thing, movie-wise or what have you, that you're just like, no.
The last movie that was a horror movie that frightened me was The Omen 2.
I don't know that I've ever seen the second one.
The first one's brilliantly horrifying.
Yeah, the first one's one of the scariest movies ever made.
The second one, it's the second scariest movie ever made.
I said one of.
I will reveal the scariest movie of all time, in Jeff's humble opinion,
I was about
at the
to
end of
say,
this episode.
And because you're stating it this way, obviously it's not The Exorcist, which is what everyone would generally agree upon.
Ridiculously silly movie. Poltergeist, ridiculously funny movie.
Poltergeist is kind of funny. Poltergeist has a couple of moments. The first one wasn't meant to be scary?
I hope not, because it was not frightening to me at all. Most horror movies, it's even like sometimes I'll find the books more scary. Movies, I think, because once you show me the monster, if you don't deliver to what frightens me, I lose it.
Like, so for instance, great example on that one. We just watched Krampus not too long ago. And there's multiple Krampus movies out there, but this was one of the higher budget ones. And it was really good up until they showed him. I'm like, they didn't need to show him. All they needed to do is... So for me, when a movie does a really good job of creating a terrifying atmosphere, and there's a boogeyman in the movie, whether it's a creature, whether it's a figure, whether it's a person or whatever. If you haven't shown him to me, and you don't need to, and you've got poor production value, then don't show him to me.
Yeah.
Like, show me pieces of him, scare me with part of him, and then the reactions to him or it or she or whatever it is.
Yes.
But there is definitely a part of me that's like, they're like, oh, well, it's just, there's been multiple movies where it's just so scary. The human mind can't even comprehend it, and they don't even try. It's like, you know what? Try to scare me. Sarah and I watched a movie last night, and I'm going to recommend. I'm both going to recommend this movie and totally not recommend this movie. Just came on Netflix yesterday. I think it's called "I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the Walls." Like, that's the name of the movie.
Which the name is a little frightening.
It's a little frightening, and the premise is kind of scary. And there's probably 3 really good scares in the movie. Mm-hmm. And I will say this. It is one of the most elegantly delivered, suspenseful, scary movies I've ever seen. So to that end, they did that really well. I mean, really well. Yeah. Like, the writing is really good. There's voiceover throughout the majority of the movie. So so you're constantly just listening to this woman talk. And the writing is really good. So I really appreciated that. But at the end, there was still very little story. And for me, I do not like a horror movie that is not a story. Like, you can show me an excerpt of a horrible time or a scary time. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with watching, like, say, a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where there's not really you don't have to give me a beginning, middle, end there. You can just say, teenagers are in trouble. Oh, no, there's a killer. La! And then slaughter all of them except one and gets away. That's fine. That's enough for me.
And I don't consider that a horror movie.
But if you're going to create this, if you're going to take it more serious and make an atmospheric thing, I cannot tell you how many movies I've watched in the past, like, say, 10 years. It's like people forgot. It's like everyone making horror movies forgot what a 3-act structure is. Yeah. They just give you Act 2 for the whole movie.
For the whole movie, yeah.
I'm like, you didn't tell me everything that's going on in the beginning, and you didn't tie anything up at the end. Mm-hmm. And but what they do well is atmosphere. Like, they do the atmosphere so well that I think people think, oh, that's enough.
No.
And I don't think it is.
No, and to me, suspense is one of the major elements missing in most horror movies. I don't find most horror movies. No, for me personally, they don't deliver it for me.
Okay.
And I'll check this movie out because there are movies that do suspense very well, not horror movies. And they try. For me, horror movies do good at atmosphere only. Because one, I usually kind of have an idea very early on what's happening.
Have you ever seen High Tension?
I probably haven't watched one in the past 3 years.
All right, watch High Tension.
Okay.
For suspense.
For suspense.
It's a little gory.
You know, it's like, to me, the last...
Don't read anything about it. Just watch it.
I won't.
Okay.
I don't do that.
Yeah.
Because I like to be tricked.
This one will trick you.
Good. And there are things that do. To me, one of the most suspenseful movies of all time, which kind of got on the edge of horror, but was more of a thriller, was Dead Again. This was a brilliantly made movie with some of my favorite actors. Kenneth Branagh played the lead.
Yes, I remember this movie.
And the cast, Emma Thompson, his wife at the time, which for some idiot reason he divorced, making him the idiot.
Yeah, which is saying something because he's a smart guy.
Yeah. Derek Jacobi, one of the most brilliant actors of all time, up there with Brian Blessed in my book. Better than Brian Blessed in my book, which might mean nothing to you depending on what you watch, I guess.
I would say I don't know. The name's not coming up.
Brian Blessed.
Well, he's in this one, or
Brian Blessed is not in this one.
Oh, Andy Garcia was in it.
Brian Blessed is more of a stage actor. Movie wise, let's see, he was Hawkman in The Wonderful Flash Gordon. Best character of the movie by far. Hey, there were some good characters in that movie. It was a bad movie.
I haven't seen Flash Gordon in so many years. That's one I got to rewatch.
He was in the first season of Blackadder. He was Blackadder's father. Okay. He's a brilliant presentational Shakespearean actor.
What's the name again?
Brian Blessed.
I'll look it up.
And he's been in more famous stuff, but I remember quirky stuff because I'm quirky. But this movie did a great job because they're playing with past lives and they're trying to solve a crime in a previous life, which the two main characters, played by Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson, were involved in this murder in their previous life. And so through Robin Williams delivering some hypnotism and thoughts coming to realization, you're trying to struggle to find out who the bad guy is, who killed them, which brings you into the modern day thrillerness. And that movie was a brilliant job for suspense for me.
Yeah, that was a good movie.
But in general, things that horrify me are two things: religious apocalypses of any form and monsters. So like the end of the world frightens me.
Just the concept of, or are you talking about a specific movie?
But like basically any movies that kind of that do a good job going over a mythological end of the world scenario.
So like the Omen.
The Omen, the first two. The third movie I never saw.
I have to watch the second one.
Yeah, the second one was good too.
Yeah.
Not as good as the first one. But but it was still good. I mean, Seven I thought was a good movie. Anything
I wouldn't call that apocalyptic in any way.
I'm not meaning Seven. There was one around the same time. There was with Demi Moore and the seals breaking on
the Seventh Seal, either the Seventh Seal or the Seventh Sign.
Seven was just the crazy religious guy.
Yeah.
Which was also kind of a frightening movie.
It was a terrifying movie.
Yeah.
Seventh Seal, was it?
The Seventh Sign.
It's either the Seventh Seal or the Seventh Sign.
Not the Seventh Son. That was kind of a lame movie. And much more modern. But it should have been a good movie because I wanted to like it. Now,
Seventh Sign. You're correct. 1988.
Yeah. So,
I don't think I ever saw this movie. I'm aware of it, and it's
like I would not call it the greatest movie of all time, but it did its job.
Yeah.
But as for pure horror, like things I really wanted to be afraid of, like Clive Barker is a brilliant horror writer. Anything ever made by him into movie form has not been horrible. The first Hellraiser was decent.
The first Hellraiser, I find that they got. I would say that a lot of them were like torture porn before torture porn was a thing.
Yes.
You know, they were like the Saw or the the Hostel of the late 80s, some of your old school slashers. And some of them were definitely, especially Hellraiser, more heady than what could really be displayed appropriately in film at the time, And
I would say, once again, the failure of the first Hellraiser movie was it was great as a horror movie until they showed the monsters. Until the Cenobites came out, Pinhead looked frightening. Some of them looked ridiculous to me and made me giggle. You're not supposed to have that reaction to a monster where you giggle, and maybe that's something more about me than for other people.
I think part of that might be your.
I'm a sicko.
Well,
is that what you're saying?
No, but maybe you're not suspending your disbelief enough, because sometimes those movies require that. I mean, obviously, some of the Cenobites are silly looking, but if they walked out of the wall from a glowing patch of light and there was wind inside your house,
I would potty myself.
Yeah, exactly. That would be horrific. So you have to place yourself in the shoes of the character.
I tried to do that, but the problem is, and this is the problem with horror and visual media in my brain, is when you show a monster the most horrible thing that you can think of, that's the most horrible thing that you think of. And where it might come close to what other people agree, the further it gets away from their definition of the most horrible thing that they can think of, the harder it is to maintain that. That's why I still think it was a brilliant concept.
I cannot believe you're just going to... Like, in my mind, I'm just waiting for you to finish your thoughts so I can talk about it.
Hit it up.
Well, no, I was just going to say the thing that it's two parts, because it kind of goes back to what I was saying before. Like, in that, they say it's such a scary thing that it can't truly be beheld in its truest form, so it only appears to you as you can conceive of it. And in the movie, I mean, should I say...
The miniseries, yes.
Should I say what it... Yeah?
Oh, it'll add extra horror with all of the news media today.
No, I mean what it reveals itself to be at the end of the movie. Should I say that?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, so it kind of shows up as a giant spider at the very end of the movie, and you're like, that's the best you could do? But that's not what's scary. What's scary is throughout the movie... And this is something that I love about Stephen King, both in the movies and obviously his books and stories, is that he manages to take the mundane and make it supernatural, special, and absolutely terrifying. I know I've mentioned in a prior episode, there was a short story he did, I believe, called The Sundog. And it's about a Polaroid camera that a kid gets at like a secondhand store. And that's all it is.
Yeah.
It's a Polaroid camera. And the pictures that keep coming out of it, like they take a picture of whatever, and it doesn't take a picture of whatever. Every picture that pops out, subsequently coming out of the camera, is another picture of this dog. And it slowly, but throughout the course of the story, becomes absolutely horrifying.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, it's just a Polaroid camera and a Polaroid popping out of it.
Yes.
So it's Stephen King's ability to take something like in the... I can't even remember. I think it was like an earring in it, and he manages to imbue this earring with power to kill the bad guy, and like you believe like, oh my gosh, they need this earring, and it's a woman's earring. That's all it is.
Yeah.
But he builds it in a way in your imagination, and throughout the course of the story of it, he does that left and right, and it's terrifying.
I'll say we have
plus. Clowns.
We have two friends who are brilliant at delivering horror stories, Nate and Dave Hawkins.
I don't know that I've ever dealt with either one of them delivering horror.
Oh, okay. Which is a shame.
I certainly don't doubt it, because both of them are very impressive, imaginative people,
and especially when it comes to horror, which is saying something, because like if you've done other things with them, you know that it extends beyond horror.
Yeah.
I don't actually know if you know Dave Hawkins that well, but
Dave and I ran in your campaign for a while.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, I've played with him as a player many times. I've never played with him as the GM.
It's like Nate was always very good. A lot of my ideas of how to do horror come from him, even though he's younger than me. Is adding the horror elements in a lot came from him. This idea, and what reminded me was you talking about the mundane was. He was the guy who came up with the moose story and how you can make a moose terrifying by you're in a car and then the headlights go out and the moose is just 12 feet closer. You don't hear it move. And that's the only thing that happens is the moose every time appears 12 feet closer. And that could be horrifying in delivery. even though the idea is you have this moose that's not moving, that's simply 12 feet closer. And Dave came up with one of the most brilliant monsters of all time, one called the Street. And I actually adopted and used him in some of my campaigns because it was obviously sort of internalized to the way I thought of it at that point. But the best part of it was when you would first run into it, typically what you would see is just this dog who would not react to you like a dog would. He would just kind of sit there and stare with his head sideways. Not a particularly frightening dog, not a Rottweiler, just a mutt-looking dog that would sit there and sort of turn his head sideways and look at you, not appear to be afraid or happy, just sit there and look at you and would maybe follow you and just it wouldn't let you get a hold of it.
There's a lot of good horror movies that do things like that, where they present a what seems like a perfectly normal circumstance,
just slightly,
one little aspect of that circumstance is just a little off, and that's great. Like, oh, here's a dog. Well, sure, I've seen dogs before, and he's not quite reacting to me. Dogs tend to. Okay, that's weird.
Yeah, or it's like the idea where if I put muddy footprints in a house, that could appear creepy on its own. But now if I have burned footprints into the floor and there's a brimstone smell in the air, that adds a whole like onion layer of creepiness to it. And then if I have them walking down the hall and then up the side of the wall and across the ceiling and they just stop right above you, that's even creepier.
Well, and also going back to the moose, when you have going back to the moose and the dog, because I feel you had more to go on that.
Yes.
When you have something that's normal and then immediately not normal, of course, and a lot of the paranormal activity movies like live and breathe off of that concept, where the camera's slowly panning and you see something in the background or something all of a sudden happens that is really not normal. Poltergeist, I think, was one of the first movies that did that incredibly well, where the woman, the camera just pans. It follows her as she steps towards the kitchen, and you see the dining room table in the foreground. She steps towards the kitchen, and then she steps back. When she steps back, and this is all of the matter of like a second, all of the chairs have been stacked on top of the table.
Yes.
So,
very mundane.
Very mundane, but it was 1 second, no sound, and nobody else in the room. All of the chairs have been stacked on the table. And so absolutely terrifying. Like, but what do you tell anyone?
Or should be. But for some reason, they just don't do it
So
for
go
me.
back to the
know.
dog. You were talking about Dave and the dog. And
So-
Street?
The name of the creature was a Street. And it was this sort of... The idea of the creature in general was it's this old god, sort of for you Lovecraft fans, and really for any mythological people who study mythology of Greeks or whoever, there's always this older race of gods, and they're actually worse than the current ones usually. And
Always are.
at least that's the propaganda you get from the new gods. And so it's this idea that it's this truly ancient evil type of thing. But in its basic presentation, it was just this... and not itself, but its tendrils were actual. These are the mutt dogs that would just go around and follow people, and they were actually acting as spies. And so they just didn't act normal. If you threw the dog food, it wouldn't eat it. And now, at the worst opportune moment, what would happen is the dog would implode inside out, and the innards would become the outards, and that was the horror that this creature would cause to people. And actually, I believe it fed off of fear. Or maybe that was one of my adaptations. I forget. But it was just a brilliantly conceived monster because in its basic, you could really creep people out in a story just by having this dog not do what you would expect.
I like a good horror movie that shows me something I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
2, tricks me.
Yes.
I like a trick. I like it. And so we were watching that movie last night, and we had definitely gotten to a big lull in the movie. And it started off, it showed us something supernatural very early on. So really early on in the movie, it shows us something very supernatural. And I was like, and it got us both. And I was like all excited. I was like, oh, this is what it's going to be like.
Yep.
And then it does nothing for like 40 minutes. And I'm like... okay. And then they did something, and I'm like, all right, okay. and then it gets boring again. And I turned to Sarah. I said, "This movie had better scare the pants off of me at least one more time because I'm not impressed with the story delivery at this point."
Yeah.
And they did. They did have one more scare, but it still wasn't worth it because the story fell flat for me, like totally flat.
Yeah.
But have you ever seen Skeleton Key?
No.
Watch the movie Skeleton Key.
Yawn. I'm yawning
fine.
already.
All right. Skeleton Key is this really great. I don't want to get too specific because I'm going to recommend to the listeners, if you guys like horror movies and you've never seen the movie Skeleton Key, go get it. Absolutely worth watching. Great twist, great premise, very atmospheric, and a complete story.
I think the major problem I have in general when I watch horror movies, and this is not all of them.
The Others is another real good one like that. Watch those two together. Good double feature night.
The problem that I think end up happening and where I've become so tainted against them is I've seen so many that try and rely on shock scares.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
And that annoys me because to me that's lazy storytelling. And where it does work and you can go, you're not scared, you're just shocked.
Yeah.
And I think that's where in movies a lot I've been tainted against horror because books, you know, I mean, what do you do? It's like, you know, like they turn the page and you just have a big boo. Oh, wow. Oh, that boo.
Whoa, you look at the typeface. Boy, those letters are really big.
Oh my God. Covered a whole page of this novel.
I mean, like the prior page, there must have been like 1,000 words, but there's only like one word. There's 3 letters on this page.
Horrifying.
I'm so scared. I have to put this down. This one's got to go in the freezer. Jump scares. I mean, even though I have a love-hate relationship with jump scares, they have their place, and when done correctly, like they're excellent. And I feel that there's a lot of kinds of horror movies that you kind of have to have them.
Yeah.
But would you call a jump scare? I'm going to go with there's 2 different kinds. One, you're not expecting a given thing, and a given thing occurs, and that's a jump scare. 2, the music is eerie and it's slowly building, and the frame and everything is starting to allude to something creepy. You know something's going to happen because they're building towards it, and you don't know when and where, what it's going to be, and then something scares you. Would you also call that a jump scare? No. Because it's getting a forward?
Because it's pushing the horror narrative forward. So like the idea we talk about in Poltergeist, the idea of you pan the camera across, you pan the camera back, and very quickly something that couldn't possibly happen, and there's no sound to back up what happens.
There's no prelude.
Would probably cause people to jump because that was not expected of the audience either. I don't consider that a jump scare. What I consider a jump scare is you're watching Pet Sematary and the cat jumps out on the lead character. There's so many lazy jump scares.
Yes.
So there's nothing wrong with making you jump and shocking you, or I think a very good application is the opposite, where the music is mundane and normal, and then all of a sudden, you know, before your eyes, something just comes through very quickly.
And then, of course, the music immediately changes to
go with it.
Yeah.
And, so because obviously, in that element, you're using the visual and the music to play as part of the storytelling devices. So there's nothing wrong with making people jump and shocking them. My problem is when it's not related to the horror narrative and it's just thrown in there as a cheap scare.
There's that reminds me of 2 things. So one, on subject with the jump scare, and with it used in a way where it was completely unexpected. And again, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but the movie's like 15 years old at this point, approximately. So if you haven't seen it, come on. And it was a remake. So in The Ring, the thing that scared me the most in that movie, and there's a lot of creepy visuals in that movie. There's definitely a few jump scares, and there's a lot of good atmosphere and weird supernatural unexplained stuff that occurs, like when she's trying to scratch the screen and the fly is not actually in the image, it actually flies away. But it was clearly in the image. It was clearly part of the television.
So that's one of the things, you take something mundane.
Exactly. but who do you tell? Like, there was a fly. Maybe it was my eyes. Well, towards the end of the movie, when she's explaining to her son that, she met her and she like let her go. And there was this moment, and it almost seemed it was serene. They delivered it to you as a serene putting to rest the restless soul of the antagonist of the film. And you're like, oh, okay, so now it's all over. And that's how it's being delivered. So she goes, oh yeah, I think like, I don't know if she says something like, oh, I let her go, or so. I forget what she says. And then the son dart bolts upright, and he's like, why did you do that? And you're like, oh wait, that wasn't the right thing to do. And he's like, you don't understand, she never sleeps. Like, and he's immediately terrified because he's like, oh no, what you've done is way worse. You didn't resolve this scenario, you just amplified it. And you didn't know this. As the viewer, you're watching, you're going, because they delivered it in a way that was serene and seemed like a completion. Yeah. And that I thought was really good storytelling and a great way to scare you. But actually talking about, so we were talking about it a little bit ago, where we're talking about like genuinely just a scary story. I admittedly have never read the story, but I have watched the movie Something Wicked This Way Comes. And
that's a brilliant movie.
And that is a brilliant movie. It's old school movie delivery. And there is a couple things in that movie that are some of the most terrifying. And it's not even all that like visually scary or whatever, but specifically the scene where he's talking, where the antagonist is talking to the protagonist about giving him years of his life back. And watching that scene, the way it's the dude's delivery too. Like
his delivery, he made that movie.
Wow. Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. Like every part of that movie was well made. It's not a bloody horror movie at all. I mean,
no.
It was Disney. It was.
I think it was PG.
When Disney, it was in Disney's short reign of doing horror movies, and it was taking a Ray Bradbury story. Something we'll get.
Thank you, Ray Bradbury. I couldn't remember.
And this was one of the. This might be. Actually, the number 2 all-time most scariest movie in Jeffrey's catalog.
1983.
Not number 1, which is strangely a visual medium thing. But
Jonathan Pryce.
Jonathan Pryce, that was the actor, and he did a brilliant job. It's like all the casting was good, but his delivery of the lines, it's like when a lot of it was him selling, like carny tricks to people, but evil. But like when he was doing it, in my brain it was like Satan striking a deal with someone. Yeah.
It, very much like if you've ever seen the movie Needful Things.
I don't remember that.
Also a Stephen King book. And I will argue that the conclusion to that story in the movie is better than the conclusion in the book. In the book, I think Stephen was probably doing a lot of cocaine at the time of him writing the ending of that. Well, look, I'm not making a whole lot of peace.
You're not judging.
No, I'm saying he's an admitted addict. I don't know if it was. I know didn't he drink, or I don't know what was his thing, coke or alcohol.
I don't know.
It's a little bit of both. I know he was on a lot of drugs.
It could also be the fact that he produced 800 books a day.
Yeah. Well, there's that. But anyway, the conclusion to the book I found dissatisfying, and I've reread the conclusion to the book a number of times to try to iron out exactly.
Like maybe I just missed it.
Right.
Yeah.
And no, not so much. But the conclusion in the movie is terrifying. Just terrifying. Basically, you've got this guy who moves into was it Castle Rock? Yeah. And he's got a novelty shop, and like a used stuff thing, and everybody finds their perfect thing that their life is missing, that if they get this thing it'll make them happy, and it slowly leads to their ruin. And when they finally figure out that, because it all ties into everybody else, it basically puts the town against each other, and everyone starts, hurting or killing each other. And they finally realize it's this guy who just moved into town, this old guy at the novelty shop. It's his fault. And they go to him, and he's basically like, "There's nothing you can do to me." And he's like, and he says something to the effect of, he's talking, I think, to the sheriff, and he's like, he's like, I'm going to meet your grandson. It'll be a nice sunny, spring day. And he's like, he's like, I'm going to be, he basically says, like, you can do whatever you want to me, but I'm still going to be here. And I'm still going to, terrorize your loved ones no matter what. And so he very much puts across this, I am the devil sort of, thing without saying it, without saying it.
Well, it would ruin it. That's one of those things where it ruins it if you go, I am Lucifer. You're like, oh, okay, that's not frightening anymore. It's sort of like when you say the name, it weakens something. So maybe there's something to name magic as well too. But now
Max von Sydow, that's who plays him too, who's amazing.
Now, in conclusion for this episode, I've promised at the beginning.
Conclusion? I don't know that we've barely scratched the surface here, Jeff.
Yeah, and we're at 40 minutes. So
already? Oh my gosh, I could go on for days with this subject.
Yes. We'll do another episode along these lines at a different point because we've kind of
this isn't fair because I didn't get a full episode of that because we talked a lot about NaNoWriMo and other stuff. So you owe me at least one more episode on this subject.
Yeah, we'll do at least one more episode on the subject. But in conclusion, I will share
all-time scariest movie for you?
All-time scariest. I don't think it was a movie, but it was visual medium.
Okay.
Snoopy Come Home.
Snoopy Come Home.
Snoopy ran away. Frightened the shit out of me.
Like genuinely, or are you?
Genuinely. I was crying. My mom sent me to my room.
How old were you?
I don't know.
4?
Maybe, yeah. But the thought of it today still frightens me.
Why?
Because Snoopy was gone, and he might never come back. And that horrifies me more than anything. It's the loss of people. So there's actually a real point in this. But.
I figured as much. I'm trying not to get sucked up in your joke of it being Snoopy Come Home, but
come home, Snoopy, come home, come home, come home. That frightened me as a small child, and to this day, the idea of losing people is more frightening than anything else. And so it's kind of weird, but for me, I won't watch that movie today.
Because you like the idea of the impact that it had on you, or because you're still actually scared by it, or you don't want that to be taken away?
I don't want to be taken away.
Okay.
I think it would lose its impact not being full.
Childhood. Yeah. You still like to be able to hold on to childhood wonder, and there's something to be said for that and the nostalgia of that. The Dark Crystal had some scary moments in it. My wife never watched The Dark Crystal as a child, and she's a huge fan of The Labyrinth. It's one of her all-time favorite movies.
Which is shocking she missed the other one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, how did you never see The Dark Crystal? So I made her watch it, and she couldn't get through it. She's like, this is stupid. Like, she couldn't get into it. And I'm like, what is the matter with you? Like, how can you... and I know it's just she's not watching it with the mind of a child. And I still watch it with the mind of a child, but at the same time, I've also watched like all the makings of
But still, it has great storytelling elements in there. It's not, I don't know.
It's still a kid's movie. It's still definitely delivered as a kid's movie, and she couldn't get past it. So she's like, meh. And I was like, so for a very long time, we would curl up and we're about to go to bed and we'd be spooning, about to fall asleep in bed. Like, I love you. Even though you don't like The Dark Crystal. And I said that for like a year straight. Like every other night we go to bed, I said, I love you, even though you don't like The Dark Crystal. And every now and then I'll still say, maybe I'll do that tonight. It's a little Halloween homage.
All right. Now for the World Builder Task. Get on Twitter and try and shock people by saying boo in a large font.
That's terrible.
Oh, that would be a real world task.
World builder task. Ignore Jeffrey completely for a moment and listen to me. For those of you getting ready for NaNoWriMo, register if you haven't. Join the Facebook group that I'm tasking Jeff with creating. If you have any pre-beginning, any prep to do that you can do today over the weekend. Well, actually, they're going to get this Monday or Tuesday. So get writing. Yeah. They're actually going to get this the first day. So.
Okay.
Real world task.
Real world task. If you are in the New England area and you've received this episode before November 5th, go up to Chibicon, meet Kristin and myself, and learn a little bit on how you can get the most out of what you do as a hobby. If your writing's a hobby, if you cosplay as a hobby, whatever you do as a hobby, with 6 steps, you can actually very simply have a lot more money for that. And you can get more out of it. And your goal might not be to go full time, but even as a part-time basis, if you can save money going to conventions, if you can save money on the things that you purchase to do this thing that you love, and you're in the area, go to the Springfield Public Library, definitely Sunday. But I would go Saturday and Sunday, check it all out.
I'm going to see if I can't make it out
and
there too.
go see our workshop on how to turn your passion into a business.
Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil. We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends, and so would they. If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting by showing them Stitcher or iTunes, or, best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com. That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.